Hey, what is up guys? And I'm back after 3 weeks, I guess. The last video I uploaded was on July 25th, I guess. I've just been facing a massive art block, through everything. I haven't played the guitar in like 2 weeks. I haven't been able to finish one art piece in last 1 month. And I haven't made a video in 3 weeks as well. So yeah, it's been a massive art block. It's just been really hard, staying in the house for so long. You just get burnt out, you just give up. I just gave up like for a couple of days now. I've just been, going to sleep, waking up, playing games and stuff like that, but on top of that, my semester started. So I guess with that, I just, want to get everything back to normal again, making content, doing everything I do. I guess I just have to power on. So I'm going to talk about The Last Airbender today, the bane of my existence. It's one of the reasons I really want to leave this earth. Like, it is one of the greatest abominations in cinematic history, and it's basically a slap in the face of the original show. I guess I don't know how the creators of the original show, stood by as they created this, film. I guess they were completely shut out, and the creative team didn't take their inputs at all. Most of the people that criticize this film criticize it for being ignorant. Ignoring so much of the source material and stuff like that. People usually say that they didn't do their research, but it's actually not true. They did their research, they did their due diligence, and they decided to ignore it, which is worse. They earlier on in the film there is a reference to Hama, who we meet in season 3 episode 8, the Puppet Master. So if they were smart enough to include that reference so early on in the film, they did their research, but they decided to ignore all of it. The film lacks an overall flair. It doesn't really feel alive. The acting is literally terrible. The only good acting performances in the movie were Commander, Admiral Zhao, and a bit of Zuko. There are some good parts by Dev Patel there. She's the only character that actually felt closest to the show, that actually has some characteristics. Other than that, every actor in the entire movie were lifeless, and they were just like talking props. There weren't emotions, they just delivered dialogue, like this one.
My name is Katara, and I'm the only waterbender left in the Southern Water Tribe.
And the fight scenes in this movie were incredibly bad. They felt lifeless. It's like they were over choreographed, and they just sucked. Alright, the CGI actually was pretty good in this movie for 2010. There are actually some pretty cool shots. So I'm not gonna be like every other content creator on the internet, just constantly hating on this movie. There are actually a few things that I liked about this movie, which is surprising because there are people who hate it entirely. I am definitely going to get into that a bit later. So I'm just gonna go through the film entirely, like not frame by frame, just gonna, couple of key moments that stuck out to me. So we open in the Southern Water Tribe, apparently in some icy landscape, with Karen and Sam. Yeah, I refuse to call them Katara and Sokka because they are Karen and Sam. This is one of the biggest things the movie is criticized for, is casting. They just literally whitewashed the entire northern and southern water tribes when they were originally inspired by the Inuit people, which are not white. And they turned the Fire Nation into Indians, which is, I don't know, okay, I guess. I would have been behind the entire changing the race thing, but it just didn't work out. And yeah, most of the casting were terrible. None of them looked like their series counterparts, which I have no problem with. Just, make them culturally appropriate. Even if you make the Fire Nation Indians, hire some good Indian actors that actually can act and actually have menacing presences. The Fire Lord in this movie looks like a curry uncle. There are a million Indian actors who are way more menacing and way better actors. Zuko is actually, Dev Patel did a pretty good job, but there are some terrible moments like this one.
I am Prince Zuko, son of Fire Lord Ozai and heir to the throne.
Why would you turn away from the people you're talking to? Who the hell are you talking to right now? Are you talking to yourself? There are stuff like that, but there are actually some pretty good moments from Dev Patel in this movie. And then there is, the appearance of my fucking god. This is the second thing I hate about the movie, is the pronunciation of the names. Oh my god, are they terrible as hell.
Soka, don't.
So, are you the Avatar Ong?
Alright, so, after two things I hate, there's one thing I'm gonna mention that I like, is actually the airbending tattoos on the head of, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna call him Aang, because he's Aang. I actually really love the design of the airbending tattoos. I think, the show, it's an animated show, so if you have a blue arrow on your head, it doesn't look stupid, but if you, convert that into live action, having an entire slab of blue on your forehead as a tattoo would look pretty stupid. And I think they translated it really, really well into a real life tattoo, that there are more intricate shapes and forms that, actually form into an arrow. And if you look closely at the flashbacks of Aang, you can see that the arrows and the patterns in their heads are different from each monk. Aang's tattoo had a different pattern, Monk Gyatso's tattoo had a different pattern. I think that was an amazing way to do the tattoos. That was really good. So back to the things I hate. Appa and Momo, what the fuck? What is that thing? That is not Appa at all. But I mean, they just really botched the design there. Appa is way bigger than that, and he doesn't have a face so horrifyingly terrible, alright? Okay, secondly, Aang is, again, a white kid, which is insane because the air nomads were actually inspired by Buddhist monks, so you actually had to hire someone of a Chinese descent. So which they didn't, it's another whitewash. So yeah, back to one thing I like is the design of the Fire Navy ships. I think they look pretty cool. And and then there's General Iroh. It's not Iroh, it's just Ho Jensen from Iron Man with the wig on. And he doesn't look or feel anything like Iroh. There are a lot of things, that don't look or feel anything like the original one. And there's the part of the what is it, Southern Air Temple, when Aang first enters into the Avatar state, and he goes to the spirit world and he meets a weird dragon spirit, which is never really explained. I guess M. Night Shyamalan actually planned, an entire trilogy. Thank God that didn't happen. So they switched out the entire part of Aang being able to contact Avatar Roku and his past selves into this weird dragon spirit that tells Aang stuff, it's just stuff. It doesn't really add much to the story and stuff. And then they changed the motivation of the entire invasion by Fire Nation. It's like they fear all other forms of bending and they feared the spirits for some reason, I guess. Which is weird. I mean, I would roll with it, but, they did a terrible job with it. There are some bad cinematography in this movie, like, there are shots that just look janky as fuck. It's sad. And then there's the bending, the core. The core of the original show was the characters, and they neglected that entirely. Karen and Sam, they can't even act. They're just like all the time. That's the only expression they can do. Their delivery is interesting, I should say. Their acting choices were interesting. That's the most positive word I can think of. And yeah, that's actually sad. And then there's another core element of the show, which is the bending, and they turned it into pretty much shit. Waterbending is okay, I guess. It looks cool enough, but Earthbending, oh my god, were Earthbending done dirty in this film. The entire midsection of this movie, when Aang and his friends, visit the southern or northern, I don't care. They visit the Earth Kingdom and find a couple of Earthbenders that are held in prison made of earth, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. A lot of this movie doesn't make a lot of sense. So, these Earthbenders, these mighty Earthbenders, as Aang calls them, and motivates them to attack the guards, they do this. So, 5 Earthbenders, do this many moves to produce that tiny rock. Yes, that tiny. And it takes a 6th Earthbender to actually throw that rock to subdue one person. Let me remind you, in the show, an Earthbender can do this. And in the movie, it takes 6 Earthbenders to do that. So yeah, that's terrible. And then there's the firebending, which sucks. Look at that fire. That is one slow ass fire. I could outrun that fire. They got firebending right in one scene of this entire movie. I think, look at that, yeah. See Zhao throwing that fireball at these guys? That's how fast the firebending should be. You know, it really makes me wonder, if you can get it right for one scene, you can get it right for multiple scenes. But they don't. They forget. They forget that they did it right for one scene, and they just do it wrong for the millions of other firebending scenes. So back to one thing I like about this movie is that firebenders require a source of fire to do some bending, because earth, air, and water benders, they bend elements that are around them. They need a source of their elements to actually be bending. And in the show, firebenders can actually create fire out of nothing. They can create fire out of chi. And in this movie, the lower level firebenders actually require sources of fire to create fire. The only firebender that can create fire out of his chi is General Iroh, and I think that was a pretty cool choice. He's like a very powerful bender, so he should be able to create fire out of nothing. And they actually changed the plot of Sozin's Comet. Instead of amplifying the power of firebenders, Sozin's Comet would actually give firebenders the ability to create fire out of their chi instead of having sources around them. I think that was a very good creative choice made out there. Another good thing that actually shows that they did their research, and they could have made this movie a million times better. Now back to things I hate. The writing. The story is very stagnant. It's just very slow in the beginning, and then in the middle it just zaps through a lot of storytelling in like 10 minutes, and then it goes back to being slow as fuck, and then there's like a very hectic third act. So you have, there were like 20 episodes in the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and each of them were like 20 minutes, so you have like, 8 hours worth of story, and you boil that down to 1 hour and 44 minutes. That's actually a really bad creative decision right there. You could have easily made this movie like 2.5 hours, have enough time to develop your characters, have enough time to develop your stories and stuff like that, but they didn't. They cut it really short. They cut out 90% of the entire story of the first season, which really didn't work, because the first season of Avatar works, the finale of that season works because there's a massive build up to that. So you can't really have a payoff without actually building up on it first, which sucks. And there's another thing, of course, that is Sokka's ponytail. What is that? That's not what Sokka's hair looks like. This is what Sokka's hair looks like. I look more like Sokka than this guy, to cast for it. Like, really, those are actually Sam and Karen, Okay. So yeah, these are the reasons I hate this movie. There are so many, but there are actually pretty good moments in this too, like this scene. That fight scene is awesome. They did that for one scene. They could have done that for multiple scenes, but they didn't. So yeah, it's just like, there are little glimmers of hope in this movie that just make me feel like, oh damn, they could have done an amazing job, but they didn't. The reason I'm making this content is basically to highlight the fact that Avatar: The Last Airbender is actually coming to Netflix as a live action series brought to you by the original creators of the animated show, which gives me hope. And they've been saying that they have a really high budget for this show, so we're looking at some awesome CGI, some awesome action. I think there's a lot of things that they can learn from this live action version of this movie. I think the creators of the show, whatever's coming, they owe a lot to this terrible movie, because if you don't have a terrible attempt first, I don't think you'll get a good attempt. That's not maybe entirely true for everything, but in this case, I think this movie existing will only make the show better, because they can actually see what these guys did wrong and what actually went wrong, and they can build on that and they can learn from these. So yeah, hopefully we'll get an amazing live action version. And I think the 2010 one it exists.